Start.
Welcome to episode 4 of the SAFE podcast, AI Governance and Practice, from shadow risks to trusted automation. I'm your host, Jamie Tileman, and I'm joined by Vendor Director of Client Services at SafePass. And also joining me today is CEO of SafePass, Adil Khan, a recognized leader in the security and digital governance space. Together, they bring years of frontline experience helping global enterprises find the balance between innovation and control in the age of AI. Today's episode goes straight to the heart of why so many promising AI initiatives fail. Recent MIT research reveals that 95% of the enterprise AI projects don't deliver real impact. We'll explore what it actually takes to turn artificial intelligence from an experiment into a genuine strategic asset. So get ready for insights on the importance of clear ownership, the critical risks hidden in the AI layer, policy-driven safeguards, and how purpose-based lifecycle management can help bring AI under control. Whether you're a business leader, an innovator, or a governance professional, this episode will help you from chaotic experiment to meaningful, lasting enterprise results. According to a recent MIT study, 95% of enterprise AI and LLM projects fail to deliver meaningful impact. What, in your opinion, contributes to this high rate of failure?
Yeah, great question, and glad to be here. The root cause of the failures seems to be the ownership model within the organizations that are evaluating AI. There's lots of excitement, enthusiasm, and experimentation happening, but when you look at for accountability, someone who's really responsible for outcomes, and that's where it's missing. And that's true for most new technologies, that we have adopted over the decades that I've been part of this journey. So what we see is the AI pilot often gets launched with lots of excitement, sort of runs wild, and then when there are problems, questions pop up like who's responsible for these issues now that we're facing, for example, data governance or identity governance. It's like a bit of a busy restaurant where everyone wants to cook their own recipe in the kitchen, but there's no head chef to coordinate or take responsibilities for the final results or the taste of the meal. So without this leadership and structure, you get a lot of mess and not a lot of value.
Thank you, Bill. Yeah, absolutely right. That's so true. That resonates what I see as well, what I've seen as well. The ones that succeed are the ones that tie AI to a measurable process, right? Where governance is not just a box-checking layer, but part of the execution loop. Experimentation itself is healthy. Of course it is, right? It's where we got today with technology, right? Ultimately, it was scientific method and experimentation. But the real challenge then is moving from the let's trying it out, and sometimes, that mindset of scaling or bringing value or land and expand with your ideas and what you're contextually experimenting with within the business. So the real challenge then is moving from that mindset to this genuine, right, we're invested, we're going to use it for critical work, and how you practice or work alongside the business to ensure that the AI agents and the clients that you're building, which genuinely start as small projects and might only touch a small amount of your data or non-sensitive data, suddenly gain access to the keys to the kingdom, right? And you're left with open privileges even after the project is over. No one's tidying up after the fact, right? Upgrades, new modules, you have this hygiene as you're working through your IT projects. Why wouldn't you be doing it with new technologies? And therefore, without proper lifecycle management and clear awareness of what every agent is actually doing, documented, right? Here are the single threads, process diagrams. Here is where we branches off into other areas and a multiplicity of issues that can come out of that. So it quickly leads to a situation where security and compliance and that's cleaning up the fallout from those early decisions. And we want to avoid that.
So how do we fix it and move forward responsibly? How should organizations adapt They are security governance strategies to manage both human and machine identities as agents become widespread?
I think it comes down to, if I may answer this one of the deal,
Sure.
life cycle management, right? It's got to be purpose-based. Every identity, whether human or machine, should have a clearly defined role. What actually takes part in that? What is the scope of the role in terms of the system? And it's not good enough to just be tertiary with this high-level processes can't touch each other, because often there's interoperation between base levels of the applications that you're working with just by a process of design. And that means when privileges are granted, you need to ensure there's an expiration date in place. So precise scope, what you want it to do, what it potentially touches in terms of sensitivity, and then when that access may end. So you would think about it in the same process as the human employee. You have contracts, you have start dates, you have end dates. So join, a move, a lever is often an acronym that's used in the space. So it's not just an open-ended access, right? And this brings much needed visibility to the process for people who it matters to within the business, right? And that's your risk managers, whether that's an individual internal audit team, a group of users that have been selected as the risk management organization within the business, right? And so the organization then is able to provide an instrument of governance so that every privilege, every action is tracked and renewable. And then you need to move away from this idea that governance is a black box and, don't touch it, and, because you might break something. Well, in reality, you have to transform into a transparent, auditable system. That do?
Absolutely. Great point. And, it's also supported by the industry research that we're seeing in our analyst discussions and papers that we're reviewing. So, governance now in the world of AI really means the responsibility for, example, in case of AI and how it touches every aspect of our business. For example, the revenue recognition side or the customer data side. And so the question is, who owns that, right? Who's responsible for that? For example, a recent Forrester study has pointed out that the top performing organizations build trust beyond by being more consistent in applying the same reviews, rules, and transparency to every actor, whether it's a person or a bot. So in that way, it's similar, and it aligns very well with what SafePass is building for our customers. Where we're building a policy-based governance platform for many years, which enables you to actually delegate authority, allowing the leaders to assign and remove audit access, privileges, and so forth with ease. So the entire process is instrumented so that the data flows directly into compliance dashboards and giving organizations and leaders the power to adapt while staying in control.
Let's put this into practice. What are the most overlooked risks to enterprise data from integrating LLMs and other advanced AI agents? And how can businesses address those?
So yeah, let me jump in here. And one of the major risks that often is missed is what happens in the process layer, right? For instance, you might set up an AI agent to help optimize logistics, a great use case for AI agents. And it works as intended for a while, but then because its access or context is too broad, it suddenly starts approving purchases that fall outside of your today's policies that it is not aware of, for example, or not trained on. So there's no bad intent involved. It's just a drift because that's what AI would do if it's not contextualized and learned based on that policy information. So when there aren't well-defined safeguards like policies, context-sensitive prompts, or real-time privilege awareness, that's when the control is lost rapidly. Verinder?
Exactly that, Adil. That's it. Big part of the problem is that other platforms, SailPoint, for example, these traditional identity management or governance applications were built for a different era. Okay.
Right.
Just as we moved through the digitization of internal controls with 404 in 2006, technology and software, again, has to modernize, right? It needs to move away from static human-centric models. They weren't made for the genuinely dynamic businesses today, disparate applications, right? You've got clouds, non-clouds, you've got a lot of moving parts within organizations, and AI is just accelerating that, right? And so machine identities, modern safeguards are needed to be policy-based and adaptive. And that means custom prompts and governance rules that are tailored to every bot's purpose and the context it operates in.
That's a really important point, Brenda. Can you give me an example that maybe talks about how these risks play in the real world, and especially when AI agents go beyond their intended boundaries?
Okay, scratch my head, but for sure, but absolutely. I think so. The operational risk is AI proving or triggering actions outside of the business context. You can't trust automation without decision traceability at the end of the day. Checks and balances is one of the nuances. So imagine you've got a curious dog, and I've got a very curious dog here. She's a delight. And I gave it access to my whole house because I trust it. Which, to be frank, if you don't want your homework eaten, you wouldn't do. And there you go, right? There's your off the cuff example of this. But let's look at this properly in a logical example. But one day you find it in the fridge, right? And it's eating your birthday cake. Didn't mean to do anything wrong. It just wasn't told not to. AI behaves the same way. If you don't create explicit boundaries and reminders, it might wander into places it shouldn't go. So, for example, eating your birthday cake, or as in my instance with the dog, eating a huge vast amount of my documentation that I then had to get reproduce. But no, that's where, that's the example, right? It needs to be told what to do so it behaves.
Absolutely.
That makes a lot of sense. I can imagine one of the biggest challenges for organizations isn't just identifying risks, it's managing the shift that comes with them. When you start introducing governance to systems that were built to move fast, that would be pushback. What are some of the most common challenges that you see organizations face when trying to bring AI under structured governance? And how do they overcome that?
Yeah, great observation, Jamie. So what we're seeing in our conversations with clients is the biggest hurdle is more cultural, not technical. There's lots of great technical assets available to us and our clients, but AI is moving fast, right? So sometimes too fast for established governance processes, right? And then many times many teams are worried that adding controls will slow them down because they have these CEO mandated deadlines to go to market and prove to the stockholders that they're adopting AI. The key is reframing the governance as an accelerator, not a blocker. And that's a challenge. It's a cultural challenge. So with automation, you can have the guardrails that actually let innovation move faster and flourish, because leaders no longer have to worry and wash their backs that they're going to have compliance gap or their data will be on the dark web because AI went rogue. And that's kind of what we see as the big barrier. Brendan?
Yeah, exactly that. You don't want the Terminator scenario, do you? I had to get that movie guy, but it's an interesting dovetail, right? Resistance comes from misunderstanding what governance really means, right? You should be in the early days, is the where the digitization stopped and compliance in 404. There was the over-engineering of roles and responsibilities and rules, right? And therefore that in itself created friction and issues about visibility and trust and too much red tape on the engineering side. And then it went the other way, too lax. And then you end up with red tape in another part of the process, right? And so to the point you raised on consistency, right? Modern governance is about visibility and trust. The glass is a variety of different rules and consistency, right? And once teams see that they can experiment without losing control of these items, They can automatically track across the work they're doing when there's more work, less work. I don't have issues with scaling, right? And really pushing the boat out when it comes to what you want to do with AI. So in the same vein, you want a system that doesn't let this experiment get out of control. The system automatically tracks the access, the privileges, and the activity. The fear for the business disappeared, it de-risked, right?
Yep.
And it becomes less about restriction and more about confidence. The confidence to scale AI safely and substantially with a proven application and methodology that provides a wrapper of security around what you're doing.
Yep.
Let's talk about another risk that's growing quickly, shadow identities. Can you explain the concept of shadow identities in the context of AI and what controls are most effective to combat that risk?
Yeah, absolutely. So shadow identities are essentially hidden boss accounts that get created outside formal processes. Hackers could build them, get into your system, lay down some shadow identities that are triggered. And certainly the patterns with models that were touted as being secure, and they ended up being third-party models, and access was gained through a variety of systems. And that's the risk. They aren't shown in regular inventories. They're rarely managed or reviewed. It's the same thing with any type of digital hygiene, whether it comes to security controls, roles. Sometimes you hear about orphaned roles that end up in the privilege logs, right? And that's a real danger if you look at it in the context of shadow identity. There's an extension of that, right? Silent actors can gather privileges over time and operate with no oversight. And certainly when we're recording this podcast, over the last few months, there have been some major instances of that. We can pull examples for you. People create these shadow bots because governance lags at the end of the day, right? Give them a safe, visible lane and a mandatory registration for access. And that's your third-party risk. But you might have to edit that bit there. So for third-party risk, you need a safe, visible lane and mandatory registration before access. So again, as we highlighted a few moments ago, innovation continues without chaos. Good documentation, proper preparation builds to success.
Yeah, those are good points. And just to add to that, Jamie, I would say that this is where the automated monitoring that we're building at SafePass becomes vital, right? Now, you should have mandatory registration for every AI agent before it interacts with the business critical data or systems. This is just, again, back to Verinder's point, basic hygiene, that you do not let identities out without registration and control around it, especially in the world of AI, where the risks are enormous to your data and security. So with SafePass, what we're doing is building this continuous scanning, capturing, and inventorying capabilities for your identity lifecycle, essentially, both for humans that we have done for many years and customers relied on, but now today, more and more for machines of different category, right? So that's where when we can apply the policies and controls to ensure that nothing falls through the cracks, whether it's human or a non-human identity, and everything is more visible. So there's more transparency on how business is executed in the modern digital platform.
Legacy identity practices are still the norm for many organizations. Where do you see the biggest gaps in the current access management practices, and when it comes to AI and automated agents?
Honestly, when I think about this, Jamie, from a standpoint of where we are with the current landscape of IGAs and IAMs, I'll just pick one that I see quite a bit out there is a SailPoint, where they were just designed for a different landscape and not for this new paradigm that we're discussing on this call today of non-human identities, right? So onboarding humans is a very different process. There are different risks, frankly. They're assigned static roles, which can be periodically reviewed, and you're working at the speed of humans, taking into account all the elements and constraints that humans have, which machines don't. And so with machines, that's more flexible, it's more dynamic. and it's all machine-oriented identities today. So it's a different set of rules where the traditional platforms, which were great for the old world, are not scaling up for the modern world. So the most glaring gap is the absence of automated, contextualized decision-making. Adaptability is another way to put it. So the access often gets stuck being either too generous or too restrictive, which creates either bottlenecks in your business or it's the keys to kingdom problem, right? So we need to move from who logs in to who owns outcomes. And that's where governance drives performance, not red tape and bureaucracy.
You're absolutely right. And this is why what we do at Safe Parties is different. We automate the capture and the tracking of every governance action in real time. Every privilege, every authority change is logged the moment it happens. And you can always see who did what. And then for sensitive tasks, we can enforce maker checker models. So a bot needs explicit approval from a human, and that's really important, right? Explicit approval. And what it can specifically do from a human before executing important actions, right? Defined by you, the customer. And this not only tightens security, but also boosts accountability across the board.
So how does centralized oversight and smarter workflows actually build trust? What role do centralized oversight and policy-based approval workflows play in building trust in a digital workforce powered by AI?
Great question. Trust is all about predictability and transparency. When governance is automated and centralized, you always know where to look for the answers. Who did what, when, and why? The trifecta. Data, context, and actions are captured in one place, not scattered across teams or departments, or worse still, databases and spreadsheets, right? When requests, human or AI, follow the same approval logic, right? Consistency, automation stops feeling like a black box that needs diagram and vast reams of documentation. And thereby, naturally, by logical progression, it becomes predictable. With policy-based prompts at every important decision and inflection point, you make sure nothing's going to slip by without notice.
Exactly, Werner. Just to add to what you said is that, from a SafePass perspective, we believe that every approval and delegation of authority should be tracked. And that's how we have built our platform. So you'll never have to worry about AI acting in a black box and going rogue. Everything is visible and attributed to the actions that they're conducting through the identity. This fear audit trail inspires more trust in automation and makes executives a lot more comfortable embracing this new innovation.
Let's finish by talking about practical real-world auditing that doesn't slow down innovation. How can organizations ensure the practical and ongoing auditing of AI activity without slowing innovation or burdening the business?
That's something I'm spending a lot of time with our product managers and our strategy folks and our industry experts like Verinder on the call today is, how can we evolve and move in the direction where we can bring safeguards to this AI governance industry, right? That's exploding. So we have evolved from traditional, controls that are just, designed primarily for humans to these massively more adaptable and faster ways of automating every privilege, action, and policy that can be logged and flagged for review at the moment it happens, and the speed of which business is conducted today, and where it's going to move to in the coming future with the speed of AI. So what that means is you don't need armies of manual reviewers. I was talking to a bank recently that basically has 500 employees just sitting there reviewing all the activities. That's the overhead that you can potentially run into, not to mention the barriers to leveraging AI into a success, right? So, for example, in the treasury case, AI reviewed hundreds of thousands of transactions in bulk, only flagging the outliers for human security and scrutiny. And then this whole idea of maker checker that we just talked about a minute ago, the model means that AI can do the heavy lifting, and people can focus more on what truly matters. Brinder?
That's it. That's the future. Continuous monitoring is a new reality. You can't live as periodic audits. Security and compliance can't live as periodic audits or manual gain, right? They have to run quietly and continuously, offering real-time visibility without interrupting delivery, right? And so with that, security and compliance always at the foundation, embedded into every change and every workflow. And compliance isn't something you pause to prove. It's already proven all the time. That's where you want to be. And that shift then turns oversight from a drag into an accelerant, right? It's not a cost, it's an investment. Because innovation moves faster because there's confidence in the baked-in product. It stops the friction, and the outcome is that oversight becomes the advantage. And enterprises will adopt this model, call it maturity, don't just stay compliant. They out-innovate those, treating oversight as friction. And I think that's really, really important in the context of organizations and businesses, right? They want to be fast, they want to go to market quicker across all their channels and various processes, and therefore, the statistics associated with good compliance and innovation.
A small order. We want it all and we want it fast. Any final lessons from the field about AI governance that you want to share with our listeners?
Well, it's exciting and at the same time scary, new technology, and I think the best approach that I can sum it up based on what we just talked about is to plan things out, make sure you have the right level of sponsorship from the top down, and pick the right process and tools, and then execute.
Yes, 100%. With the maturity of AI and governance will come smarter automation. Governance platforms will then start to apply their own intelligence, right? Analyzing usage patterns, predicting risks, which we're already doing in some context, right? This is about maturing that, improving that, providing a greater oversight and transparency to this critical information within the business, right? And that next frontier then isn't just about governing AI, is what I'm saying. It's AI helping to govern more effectively. And the next evolution is feedback-driven governance, right? AI that adjusts risk dynamically and learns behavior. And in order to do that, it can't be a bolt-on after the fact. It's got to be baked in your processes and your thinking really early on. And that's when governance becomes predictive and really can knock the boardroom questions that you're going to get out of the park. And so compliance isn't taking up the time of these board meetings, and they can concentrate on core competencies, which is growing the business.
It sounds like there's a balance going on here between innovation and control. And I'm sure we'll keep evolving, and we probably will come back to this topic again. But organizations that prioritize trust and consistency will lead this evolution. And that brings us to the end of today's discussion. Thank you for joining us on AI governance and practice, from shadow risk to trusted automation. Be sure to subscribe and share your feedback, and send in any questions for our next episode. See you next time.